RealAgriculture.com's coverage of Cropweek 2012 in Saskatoon is brought to you by Nodulator XL, accelerated performance, accelerated yield, and Cantera Seeds, yes you can, and FarmLink Marketing Solutions, market analysis works.
Tyler Roberts, I work with New Holland Corporate, and I'm a sprayer marketing specialist.
Okay, so sprayers are kind of the big theme of this year's show. At least it seems like everybody's got a sprayer here. What do you guys have here? What are you showcasing?
Today we're showcasing here our small front boom sprayer. It's a 240 horse front boom sprayer. Some of the features on this sprayer, we have the single pass cooling system. What that means is that our radiator, oil cooler, and AC condenser and air-to-air intercooler are all stacked side by side. You can see the different modules there. So we get a nice fresh breath of cold air over each rad throughout the entire day. So on the drive system of the sprayer, we use a twin hydrostat pump system. So what that means is one hydrostat pump runs one front corner tire and one back corner tire wheel motor, and the other hydrostat pump runs the other two kitty corner tires. So basically we don't have any switches in the cab. There's no four-wheel drive switch. You basically have four-wheel drive all the time. So if one tire starts slipping, you know you've still got one hydrostat pump still, got driving traction on the other two wheels. Moving down from the hydrostats into the wheel motors, we do use a pretty fancy wheel motor. It's a Polk Lane, it's a Canadian-built wheel motor. And the first thing that you'll notice if you step around to the other side of the tire there is you'll notice that there's no planetary hub sticking out on the outside of the tire. And so basically our planetary gear assembly is inside that planetary wheel motor. And the advantage to that is having that gear set piggybacked right on top of the wheel motor itself. Is that when this machine's going down the road at full speed, 30 miles an hour, the top shaft speed inside that wheel motor is going to only be about 200 RPM. If you take that planetary gear set right out of there and you put it into a hub and then you have a drive shaft running that planetary, the actual wheel motor speed has to be 5,000 to 6,000 RPM. So there's a pretty substantial increase in RPM there going from those two. So very unique. High torque wheel motors, lots of power to the ground. So none of the other competitors have been using it, so it's pretty good system.
So what else do you have that's unique to the sprayer?
Something else that's extremely unique to the sprayer is our walking beam suspension system. Now you'll notice here we've got our main frame rails that run basically perpendicular to the machine, and they go right to the boom. So the boom is basically, there's no pin in the boom. The boom is rigid. So when I put that boom down on the ground, and I'm doing 20 mile an hour and I'm steering side to side and cranking off, the boom actually stays extremely level to the ground. So the idea behind the suspension, which is on this kind of the secondary walking axle, is the idea is to keep this main frame as level as possible. So the best way to explain the system is just to kind of give you some examples. So what you'll see here is that on all four corners we have a large cylinder here, a hydraulic cylinder. You get 20 inches of travel, so you get 10 up and 10 down, industry leading. Nobody else in the market has that. Tied into those hydraulic cylinders is an air-charged accumulator, which you kind of maybe can't see here, but it's tucked up in the frame rails here. You have an accumulator for each wheel. So we say this tire drops down into a rut. So what'll happen is as this tire gravity drops it down into the rut, this whole frame assembly here will pivot on this pin. And as it's pivoting on the pin, it strokes a hydraulic linkage here. This frame will just pivot down and push on that. And it'll come through a valve and it'll actually put oil into the top of that cylinder and actually drive that wheel down into the ground so you don't get that popping action like if it was an air ride system. And as it comes up out of the rut, it'll actually pivot up the other way because it's going to walk ahead, and it's going to do the opposite with this linkage, stroke it the other way, and then put oil into the bottom of the cylinder and just help it walk out. So day-to-day operation of this sprayer, you'll notice that your walking axles they're kind of popping along, and in the cab you're really not feeling nothing. You also tie in the airbag suspension on the cab, which the airbags are located right here. You can't ask for a better ride. And then finally, moving ahead, last feature obviously is the front boom itself. You're being that boom is rigid to the main frame, customers can feel that they can spray closer to the ground. The boom isn't rocking all day long. They're not worried about it crashing into the ground. You're putting your chemical on before you've trampled the crop, before you've dusted the crop. Dust is a big concern when you're spraying. You don't want to get dust on any part of the plant, and then because the chemical will just hit it and run off, and it becomes very ineffective. So having the boom out front really helps with that. Also, having the boom out front is operator fatigue. You're not cranking your head around all day. You're not worried about what's going on behind you. You can see all your nozzles. You know that your center section's working because it's right out in front of you. And the last thing also is because the boom is out in front of the steering axle, when you're trying to get around hydro poles and maneuver around obstacles in the field, when you turn, that boom will actually follow with you, as compared to a rear boom where you're going to speed the boom up and actually drive it into objects a lot harder. So.